Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I now call to order the February 13th, 2024 meeting of Lancaster City Council. A couple of reminders for everyone this evening, and thank you all for being here. It's nice to have a full room. Please take a moment now to silence your cell phones and devices if you haven't done so already. This meeting and its participants are being recorded. This evening there will be several opportunities for public comments. If you wish to make a comment, please do so at the microphone so that you can be heard in this room and on the live stream. Comments must begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting record and should be addressed toward council. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and should address issues that have or may come before council as legislation. To keep time, you'll see this light here in front of me. It will be green for the first 2 minutes, for the first 2 minutes. It will turn yellow when you have 1 minute and will turn red when you've exhausted 3 minutes. Thank you all in advance for allowing equal time for everyone. And now for those who are willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig. Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Baker.
Here. Councilor Craig is excused this evening. Our next item is the approval of the minutes of the January 23rd, 2024 meeting of council.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the meeting minutes. Any council comments on them? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We now move to our proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. I know we have several this evening. Mr. Harris, would you begin with the first one, resolution number 8?
Yes, Madam President. A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster designating February 2024 as Black History Month in the City of Lancaster and recognizing resistance to injustice by African Americans throughout Lancaster's history.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. I would like to thank Councilor Craig, who introduced this resolution on my behalf during our committee meeting earlier this month, and it's my pleasure to introduce this resolution again this year. I want to recognize that Blanding Watson, the president of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP, is here this evening, and I would invite him to come on up and say a few words about this resolution. And anyone else he'd like to welcome up with him. Thank you for being here. And just make sure that little green light is on that mic. You might have to hit the button. I certainly can.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
It would be my pleasure to do so.
All right.
Resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster designating February 2024 as Black History Month in the City of Lancaster and recognizing resistance to injustice by African Americans throughout Lancaster's history. Whereas, since 1976, February has been recognized by the United States as Black History Month, and national attention has been focused on the history of African Americans, the civil rights movement, and efforts to advance the place of African Americans in society. And whereas the theme of 2024 National Recognition of Black History Month is Black Resistance, and whereas Lancaster has been the scene of Black resistance from the days of the Underground Railroad before the Civil War, during the civil rights protests of the mid-20th century, to Black Lives Matter protests in recent years. And whereas William Whipper and Stephen Smith, African-American business owners in nearby Columbia, ferried runaway slaves through Lancaster in special freight railroad cars equipped with hidden compartments in the 1840s and 1850s, and clandestine Underground Railroad conductors led fugitives to and from hiding places in Lancaster. And whereas members of Lancaster's Black community and their white allies persisted in organizing to resist unfair practices in housing, education, and employment, including Abraham L. Polite, Mariana Gibbons Brubaker, and Laura Carter, who organized the Lancaster branch of the NAACP in 1923. All those who served as presidents of the NAACP Lancaster during the important years of resistance in the 1960s, including the Reverend Philip Acco, Robert A. Cooper, Ashley S. Dudley Jr., and the Reverend Alexander L. Stevens, Kenneth Boast, the Reverend Ernest Christian and Kenneth H. Abernathy, Betty Tompkins, Publicity Secretary of the NAACP Lancaster, and Ruby Cook Bogie Payne, who served for nearly 30 years as leader of Christus Attic Center. And whereas Black leaders in academia both created and documented Black history in Lancaster, including Frederick Reed, the first Black male teacher in the school district of Lancaster and an alumni of Franklin and Marshall College, Hazel I. Jackson, who held her own quiet protest, spent Friday afternoons in the 1950s outside of the office of the school district of Lancaster superintendent before being hired as the district's first Black female teacher in 1961, and founded the Black Culture Celebration at Millersville University in 1970. Dr. Rita Smith Waddell, who founded the African American Studies program at Millersville University, and Dr. Leroy Hopkins, who through his research, lectures, and articles in the Journal of Lancaster County's Historical Society has elevated Black history of Lancaster, and schools in Lancaster were later renamed in honor of Hazel I. Jackson and Dr. Rita Smith Waddell. And whereas the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church, founded in 1817 and incorporated in 1848, and other religious congregations of predominantly Black members have provided spiritual, social, and civic support to Lancastrians, and before the Civil War to Black freedom fighters traveling through Lancaster under the protection of the Underground Railroad network. And whereas, in one of Lancaster's first known civil rights era protests, Black and white youth staged a lunch counter sit-in at the Old Brunswick Hotel in 1937. And whereas, in the summer of 1963, the Lancaster branch of the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People organized protests of downtown Lancaster department stores over discriminatory hiring practices because Black employees at those stores were regulated to jobs as janitors and elevator operators. And whereas, that same summer, NAACP members were joined by members of local churches in marching outside the Rocky Springs Park pool, which the park owner refused to desegregate even after a court ruling. And whereas Henry Norwood Barney Ewell, national and international champion in track events, and winner of 1 gold and 2 silver medals in the 1948 Olympics, was recognized by the city of Lancaster in the naming of Ewell Plaza. And whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson, an historian who earned a PhD degree from Harvard University and later taught at Howard University, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915 after being barred from the American Historical Association, and in 1926 founded Black History Week, the origin of Black History Month, celebrated annually in February. And whereas Lancaster has long been a place of welcome for those seeking religious liberty and has sought to live up to the principle of liberty for all. And now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lancaster that during this Black History Month and every month, City Council calls on all Lancastrians to respect and honor the sacrifice of those who have struggled for the right of African Americans to justice and equality.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. The NAACP Lancaster branch, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, we thank you for the acknowledgement of Black History Month. It's important also to note that Black history is not just 29 days. Because of our ancestors, Blacks across America and across the world, we celebrate history every day, year-round. It's also important to recognize that Black history has always been an American history. We have continued on this journey for a very long time, over 400 years. Many Black men and women have sacrificed much for our community and have given many contributions in various fields and professions. Great leaders here in the U.S. and abroad continue the fight for civil rights, equal rights, social justice, peace and joy far and away. from us as racism set in, all the way from Africa to living on plantations in the South to other parts of the country. Our history also was reflected on Bloody Selma in Alabama. Blacks were beaten and fighting for the right to vote. Let us also not forget many of the heroes like Harriet Tubman, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Ida B. Wells, W.E. Du Bois, Jackie Robinson, Carter G. Woodson, and many more. Locally, of course, we have Reverend Ernest Christian, Dr. Rita Smith Waddell, Hazel Jackson, Leon Buddy Glover, and Laura Carter, and even Louise Williams. She was the first African-American woman to sit on city council. And she was the first Black to sit on the Board of Pardons for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And she was also the first district magistrate judge in Lancaster County. There are many others I could name and recognize. The many contributions by our living Black leaders, such as Ron Ford, Reverend Louis Butcher, Ted Darkus, Leroy Hopkins. They contributed much of building our history in this present day even. It's also important to remember that many Blacks' accomplishments and Black men in industries and professions ranging from finance, banking, science, engineering, and technology, to arts such as literature, music, and painting. Some of those is Otis Boykin, who invented the life-saving device of the pacemaker. Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, who was the first African-American woman to earn a PhD from MIT. She gave us the portable fax machine, call ID, call waiting, and the fiber optic cable. Alice Parker, who invented the gas furnace, forever changing the way we stay warm in the winter. John Purdy, who invented the folding chair, which you're sitting on. Alexander Miles, who significantly impacted the safety of elevators with groundbreaking design for elevator doors. Before his Miles innovation, passengers had to manually shut both elevator doors and the elevator cage, a protective barrier that prevented accidental falls in the shaft. Benjamin Banneker, who was also a notable polymath, who constructed a full functioning clock entirely out of wooden parts in the 18th century. This mechanical marvel, which ran accurately for decades, showcased Banneker's exceptional engineering craftsmanship. Lewis Latimer, who invented the light bulb filament. With this, light bulbs could not have been mass produced. Latimer created a light bulb model that used carbon filament, which lasted longer, made light bulb production cheaper. Charles Richard Drew, who was an MD and a Master of Surgery, pursued a Doctor of Medical Science degree in Columbia University in 1938. There, his interest in blood preservation led him to develop a method of separating red blood cells from plasma, extending blood storage beyond than 1 week limit. Today, of course, we thank you for the acknowledgement of Black History Month. We also thankful for all of the sacrifices of our ancestors and their many contributions to society as we continue our fight for civil rights and equal rights in America and also Pennsylvania and in Lancaster. Thank you. And I'm going to turn this over to a few of our other brothers and sisters to say a few words.
Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share with the city of Lancaster the rich history of not only those in the city and county of Lancaster and then the state of Pennsylvania, but all over the world. We're certainly blessed to celebrate another year of Black history, but above all, we're blessed to be able to celebrate a year of all of our history, for Black history is American history.
Thank you very much.
We're good.
I thank you all so much for being here, and I also just want to call out that I know that there are some family members of folks who were mentioned in the resolution in the room, and I want to thank you all for being here as well, and appreciate that that Mr. Watson, you are always paying attention to making sure that we have edits to this resolution that are current and recognize Black Lancastrians. So thank you for that, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I will take any other council comments on the resolution before council votes. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Fleece?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
And President Bennett?
Aye. Thank you. And Mr. Watson, I do have copies of the resolution for you. Mr. Harris, I know we do have a second resolution of recognition this evening, resolution number 10, if you would.
Yes, Madam President. A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster renaming City Council chambers located at 120 North Duke Street, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as the Nelson M. Polite Senior City Council Chambers, and authorizing the proper officials of the City of Lancaster to take any and all necessary actions to designate the same.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. Councilor Arroyo, thank you for introducing this in my place during the committee meeting earlier this month. This resolution came to council with the assistance of State Representative Izzy Smith-Waydell, who regretfully was not able to join us here this evening. We are incredibly proud to move to rename council chambers after Nelson M. Polite Sr. He and his family have made a great impact on the city of Lancaster and truly the work that goes on in City Hall even to this day. Mayor Sirachi, would you mind providing an update about what happens next after tonight's vote?
Yes, thank you, Council President. It is a delight to be able to report that tonight is just the first step. And as part of celebrating Black History, we are celebrating Nelson M. Polite Sr. and his contributions to the City of Lancaster, serving on the Planning Commission as chairman of that commission, and then serving on City Council, and then as well as president of City Council from 2000 to 2002. This is just the start. In October, we will, which is the month of Mr. Polite's birthday, we will be unveiling some changes here in City Council, as well as just outside, to honor Nelson M. Polite Sr. for his service to the City of Lancaster. And so with that, tonight, the work of council is to officially rename this chamber in his honor, and in October, we shall celebrate.
Thank you very much. I believe, because I don't think we have any members of the Polite family here this evening, but I would invite Mr. Watson back up to the podium if you would like to say a few words on behalf of Mr. Polite. And I appreciate your willingness to do that. Reverend. You're also welcome. Thank you so very much.
I was going to say that I don't resemble Mr. Watson, but I am certainly happy. The late Bishop O.T. Jones once stood and shared to an audience that was celebrating an anniversary that if you want to know a history of someone, you have to know the story of someone. In the Bible itself, there's a small pericope of scripture that tells of a character by the name of Joseph. Joseph finds himself in a foreign land, finds himself in jail, finds himself moving from the pit of the prison all the way to the palace and becoming the governor of Egypt. Upon his death, he called his family together and told them to make a promise that when the Lord will deliver them from Egypt, that they would remember him and dig up his bones and carry his bones with them. That small piece of scripture reminds us how important it is to honor and to remember those who have made ways for us. Nelson Polite, though he was not of great stature, had big shoulders in which all of us stand on. He was a man of character. He was a man of purpose. He broke glass ceilings. He opened up doors. He did so much for so many people that we cannot properly put him in a book. But this motion, this proposal, this recommendation tonight certainly allows us to not forget the man that made a way for so many others. And as we honor Nelson Polite, we also honor, again, those whom have been made part of history even now. I think of Mr. Ron Ford. Mr. Ron Ford becoming the first African-American commissioner of Lancaster County. Though he's still with us, he stands on the shoulders of Mr. Nelson Polite. So thank you, City Council, for carrying his bones. And though he's not physically with us, his memory shall always be with us every time we step into the chambers of Lancaster City Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying.
I also thank you, too, for the acknowledgement of Mr. Polite and what the council is going to be working on to approve of, I guess, the process, the first part of the process, correct, in naming council chambers after potentially Mr. Polite. As Reverend Forbes mentioned, Mr. Polite was a great man. He was a great man of courage, hope, and I'm just excited, very excited that his name has been brought forth for such an honorable thing in Lancaster City's history. I don't really have much of a story or stories to share, maybe as Reverend Forbes, but I do know that Mr. Polite, he was a vice president of our branch for a period of time and sat on our board too for a period of time, and he was also a great mentor too in many different ways. So I'm thankful that you're acknowledging him today and on this Black History Day, and as an organization, obviously we are advocating possibly or potentially that you will name chambers after Mr. Polite. Thank you for my time of words.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Are there any other council comments on the resolution? Comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please come right on up. If you could just begin with your name and block of residence for the record.
My name is Suzanne Thomas, 600 block of South Ann Street. First, I would just want to say thank you to the council and to Councilwoman Faith Craig and Mr. Blanding Watson for the declaration, including my uncle, Mr. Frederick Reed, in the declaration. I just want to say that he was not just the first male, he was the first African-American hired by the Lancaster School District. Mr. Reed came here from Washington, D.C. and attended F&M College. He was also the first Black quarterback for F&M College. He is my uncle through marriage. My cousins and I are, his wife is our mother's sister. So that's how he got here. He also coached football at Edward Hand. That was his first school that he went to, Edward Hand, and then he moved on to McCaskey. He also coached swimming and football at McCaskey. And I just want to thank you for recognizing him. It's been a long time coming, and I really wish I would have been able to give more detail about what he did here in Lancaster. He was here for several years, and then he went on to coach at Cheney College. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public on the resolution renaming council chambers? Hearing none. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Minnick.
Aye.
Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Place.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. I do have a presentation copy, and I do see that Deborah Polite has come into the room. So with your forbearance, council, if you could give me just a moment to make sure that she receives this resolution before we proceed. Thank you, everyone, for your understanding. I'm going to have you turn on.
Yep, the mic's on.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you so much for doing this wonderful duty for our father, Nelson M. Polite Sr. I know he would be very happy, and we're very happy. And for those of you who knew him, you know that he would be happy. I just want to leave one thing that someone said to me. I said it to Izzy, that they said my dad, when he left the council after being here as president, that he was here at every board meeting, and we fell out laughing. So I think that was how to let you know how much he loved Lancaster. This was his beloved place, and he has served for many, many years in other capacities as well. And he didn't want anything but good things to happen here in Lancaster. And I think that he accomplished that, and we're grateful. And this is not only about him, but it's for his legacy and others. All the young people, to him, you will be young people. And I know that he would he set an example for you to carry on. So thank you again very much. And we greatly appreciate you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, to you and your family as well. As Mayor Sirachi mentioned, please stay tuned for further updates about changes here in City Council chambers, or now the Nelson M. Polite Senior Council chambers. We now move on in our agenda to tonight's first public comment period. This is reserved for residents who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting to request the opportunity to address council. Again, duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes, and I'll have my light timer. I'll start at the beginning, I promise this time. Green for the first 2 minutes, yellow for the last minute, and we'll turn red at 3 minutes. That will help us make sure that everybody gets the same amount of time. Please begin your comments with your name and block of residence. Mr. Harris, do we have public comment for this period this evening?
We do, Madam President. First, we have Austin Mountain.
Austin. Not sure if I saw him. We had Austin Mountain. I don't believe he's in the room. I think we have some more. There is a second public comment period, so I can always call his name at that time to see if he's here. Are there additional comments, Mr. Harris?
Yes, next is Justin Capiello.
Mr. Capiello, welcome.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I apologize that the subject I'm going to talk about doesn't have the moral weight of what was just talked about.
That's all right. If you could begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Justin Capiello, 500 block of West Orange Street.
Thank you.
So, yeah, very different topic. I wanted to talk about pedestrian zones and pedestrian streets. Just a quick, and I'll keep this under 3 minutes, quick definition of a pedestrian zone. The streets immediately surrounding the Central Market that is a pedestrian zone. There's streets that used to be open to vehicular traffic and were closed to create a pedestrian zone. So I've got this written down here so I don't forget my words here. Since COVID and the need for outdoor social space that it produced, there has been in many towns and cities across America a reevaluation of street space given to motor vehicles and that given to people. Many central areas have seen businesses reclaim parking spaces for outdoor seating and other events, while some forward-looking municipalities have closed streets to vehicular traffic seasonally on special event days or permanently, encouraging people to enjoy a car-free city center. Two notable regional examples from Pennsylvania are the towns of Media and Westchester. Media has a recurring event called Dining Under the Stars, in which, and I'm quoting from their website to give you an idea of the possibilities here, every Wednesday evening, May through September, the city closes State Street, and that's their main commercial street. It would be the equivalent of our Queen or King Street, for 4 blocks. From Jackson Street to Orange Street. Closer to us yet, Westchester, Pennsylvania, closes their main street every weekend, Friday through Sunday, from May 5th to the end of October for outdoor dining, games, socializing, and other events such as the open air market. That is a 5-block-long stretch of car-free, safe, walkable space in the heart of town. Notable is the fact that these two Pennsylvania towns, these two examples, are not only architecturally similar to Lancaster, but share a similar street grid pattern, street widths, and even street names. Furthermore, each has already worked through the details with PennDOT, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and so can be used as blueprints or as a map forward for other Pennsylvania municipalities, such as Lancaster, looking to follow suit. Further afield, in New Jersey alone, to say nothing of other states, towns such as Red Bank, New Brunswick, Jersey City, Ridgewood, Manasquan, Somerville, all have similar recurring street closure events. So my question is, are there any plans for recurring street closures here to encourage enjoyment of the public realm and facilitate economic growth by supporting local business, specifically along Queen or King Streets, beyond the once-a-year Celebrate Lancaster? Should this be, or shouldn't this be, part of a long-range vision for the city?
Mr. Cappiello, I just want to let you know that you have hit 3 minutes and you have a final thought.
Final thought, first block of North Queen Street would be an ideal site for a trial run of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do appreciate your comments this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, do we have any other comments for the first period?
Yes, we do, Madam President. Next is Elaine Ettore.
Elaine Ettore? I saw her. No, I will call her name in the second period and give her an opportunity if she does arrive. Any other comments, Mr. Harris?
We do not have any other.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to reports requested by council. This evening, we do have a report from the Department of Neighborhood Engagement. I'd like to welcome Director Milsey Carrasco.
Good evening. Oops. Greetings, Council, President, Council, and Mayor Sirachi. I am so excited to be here this evening to share with you some updates from our department. Tomorrow, from our Bureau of Civic Engagement, tomorrow on Valentine's Day, we're launching 2 programs to help connect with neighbors and within our community. The first grant program that we're launching is Love Your Block. And Love Your Block, as you know, is a program where residents can apply for a $500 grant for neighborhood improvement projects. And this year, we actually have 3 new grants. We have River Connections Project. So under Love Your Block, it's a Love Your Block Rivers Connections projects to keep our water clean and educate people about our local river. We have Community Connections projects to bring neighbors together, and then we have also Safety Connections projects to help build engagement with our public safety teams. Next, we have our Neighborhood Leadership Academy that's launching, and as you know, it's a 6-week program, and we're focused on how our local government works, so residents have an opportunity to apply and connect with all of the decision makers here in City Hall. We also discuss keeping our city safe and what that actually means for our residents. making changes in our community and using community resources more effectively. So we're encouraging everyone in this room to take some literature that we have at the table. And if you have any questions, please feel free to talk to me about it at the end of the council. And then finally, something that I'm really excited to share with you, our Bureau of Tourism and Promotion, led by Chayla Hutner, has been working hard on our city's first tourism plan. We're using an inclusive, community-driven process to establish our goals and working with the national acclaimed firm specialized in tourism, and they're here with us this evening. Focus on tourism and economic development, and to develop our action plans based on community input. And today we're releasing our survey, and we need all of you to share this information and also complete the survey. And I'm going to welcome Chayla to the podium to share a little bit more about some of our planning efforts for the last year and to introduce our consultant. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council and Mayor. It's with great enthusiasm that we introduce our Lancaster City Welcome Initiative plan this evening. With support from Mayor Sirachi and our Director, Milzy Carrasco, we began the process of developing this plan for our Bureau in the fall of 2022. Through this process, we recognize the need to understand the tourism infrastructure for the City of Lancaster in a broader sense. We recently contracted consultants Eddie Alexander with their expertise and strategic development in tourism, and I'm confident that they'll lead us towards a vibrant future for residents, businesses, and visitors, all while connecting their findings to the city's strategic priorities. Eddie Alexander is a marketing and growth strategy consultancy that brings deep expertise in tourism and economic development and planning. They'll be leading us through a multi-phase, year-long process that's both community-led and data-driven. This visit and launch of our survey is especially important to me and our Director, Milzy Carrasco, of the Department of Neighborhood Engagement, as we invite our residents to be part of this process to express their views. It's a vital part of the plan where we get to hear the community feedback and what residents are most proud of. I've not only been engaged as the Bureau Chief of Tourism, but I'm poised to view this project through the lens of a small business owner in the city myself. The voice of local business will be carefully considered through the process as we work to align our efforts with the feedback from the community to help inform the economic development of our city. I look forward to their recommendations, and at the end of this engaging process, we'll explore all of the possibilities. I urge everyone here to take this important survey and be part of the planning effort with us. And without further ado, I present Jennifer Eddy, the President and Chief Strategist of Eddie Alexander.
Hello, Council President and Mayor. Thank you for having us here today. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to present this project to you and to give you a little bit of insight into what the next few months will look like. So up on the screen, we have put up a few slides that I'm going to walk you through to share a little bit more about the project and what you can anticipate over the next year. So as mentioned, I'm with Eddie Alexander. We're a marketing and growth strategy consulting firm, and we work with lots of communities around the country helping develop tourism plans that are really destination development plans, building out what is possible based on what a community wants. And so one of the reasons I think there was such a great fit between our firm and this community was a shared passion for community engagement. There are consultants that will come in and say, here's the answer before they ask what the question is. And we're not that kind of firm. We can't tell you how to get where you want to go unless we understand where you want to go. And so all of our work starts with community engagement. And you'll see a little bit more about how we can collect all the voices in the community tonight. If you'll flip to the next slide. So over the next year, we'll be working to develop a report and recommendations that will guide the Office of Tourism and Promotion for the next 10 years. It will hopefully lay out policy opportunities and investment opportunities that will help develop out the kind of Lancaster that this community says they want and how they want to be perceived in the world. So it'll shape both promotion strategies and messaging, as well as assets that can be developed out as well. So Lancaster has 300 years of historic welcoming tradition. You're a certified welcoming city. You are one of the first, actually the first city in Pennsylvania to earn that certification. And you're also known as America's refugee capital, a huge accomplishment in your homing and rehoming of 20 times more refugee resettlements per capita than in any other place in the nation.
This is very important. I apologize to interrupt you, but just in case this is anyone's car here, you are blocking folks from leaving. It looks like it's parked on the other side of the street as well. Yeah, so if you have a Toyota Corolla license plate ELP 9693 in silver, please move your car. Thank you. Apologies.
That's
It was
okay.
time sensitive. Please continue.
Okay. So for many years now, the city leaders have been working to ensure that the welcoming tradition here and the culture around it continues. And they've been looking at this through 7 distinct lenses. So there's government leadership, equitable access, civic engagement, connected communities, education, economic development, and safe communities. So this tourism and hospitality plan is one of the important ways that we're going to continue keeping Lancaster welcoming for the next generations. So Lancaster Travel and Tourism is big business. Across the state, there's $38 billion in direct visitor spending that comes from other places and gets left behind to circulate in our communities. In our region, the Dutch Country Roads region within Pennsylvania, it's $7.9 billion. And in Lancaster County, including the city, it's $2.1 billion. These are 2021 figures, so post-pandemic and before all of the recovery impacts have taken effect. I think we can all agree these are big numbers that have tremendous impact and huge potential when they're benefiting our communities. But visitors also help fund local quality of life improvements. The same things that visitors enjoy, parks and entertainment and restaurants and all kinds of activities, are the same things that communities enjoy. Further, the dollars that go into a community from a visitor, when a visitor stays for a short period of time, stay in the community and they circulate. And it's more than hotels and restaurants and the things you think of when you think of tourism. It's also the fuel they use to gas up their engines. It's the small businesses they stop in to explore and get a vibe for the town. It's the sports recreation opportunities that they engage in and the different sales of the equipment that they use while they're here. So the trickle-down effect of visitation on spending and on local business support is enormous. And then the quality of life impacts bring enjoyment up for everyone who lives here as well. The local visitor economy includes several different sort of pillars in other industries that cross over into tourism and hospitality. So when we're talking about tourism and hospitality as a segment of the economy, we're looking at lodging, we're looking at food and beverage, we're looking at retail, recreation, and transportation. And again, all of these have major economic impacts in the community. So the goals of this plan are a couple-fold. So first, we want to set the community's tourism goals and priorities for the next 10 years. We want to all be singing from the same song sheet. We want to be in agreement on where we want to go and be pulling in the same direction. We hope that this plan will guide future destination development efforts and investments. So some of this work was started with the city's comprehensive plan, the Our Future Lancaster plan, and there was solid agreement in that plan that this was something that would be the next step, that to continue to develop out this strategy. And then we want to identify key, very specific projects and promotional outreach opportunities for the Bureau of Tourism and Promotion to guide their work for the years to come. So this is a year-long project. It will then help shape the community for the next 10 years. It is funded in large part by 2 generous grants from 2 organizations, the High Foundation and the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. So it's an enormous opportunity for the community to take advantage of outside funds to help guide really thoughtfully and intentionally the growth of this community. So this process has lots of different inputs, right? We're data hounds, so we want to dig into everything there is to know. So we're going to start with a community-wide survey that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. There's going to be a business leader survey as well. There'll be all kinds of visitor analysis of who's coming now, where are they coming from, how long are they staying, how much are they spending, all of those kinds of things. Then there'll be community leader interviews, there'll be focus group discussions, community meetings and data validation sessions where we're sharing back with you, here's what we've heard, what did we we miss? Are there nuances? Are there extra things that we should know to make sure we really understand who you are and what you want before we start giving any advice on how to get there. Then, of course, there'll be some big ideas that are shared throughout this process. We'll do some initial feasibility reviews and opportunity exploration to help you galvanize support around a couple key things that everyone can drive forward over the foreseeable future. So this project timeline, it's going to work in about 3 phases, and then of course there's going to be an implementation period over the next 10 years. But the discovery phase is really that listening phase where we're going through all of those different listening sessions. Then there's going to be a synthesis phase. This will be a multi-month initiative where we're starting to pair what we heard with what we know and industry best practices, so we can start to make some recommendations in the create phase and ultimately write a final report that will come back and present to council towards the end of the calendar year. So this week, every resident in this community, every business in this community, every mailbox in this community will get one of these enormous postcards. You've probably never gotten a postcard this big. You'll get one in the mailbox. We hope you see it. We hope you use it. On the back, there is a QR code as well as a URL that you can use to go to welcomelancaster.com. That is the project website. It will share a little bit more about this initiative, but most importantly, the survey link will be there. So you can scan this QR code and go to the survey. You can take it in multiple languages. You can take it from any cell phone, tablet, laptop that's internet enabled. It's super easy to use, but it's a long survey. I want to warn you, it's about 60 questions. Most of them are multiple choice. It takes the average participant about 30 minutes to take it, but it's an opportunity to weigh in on lots of things. Where you live, how you feel about your neighborhood, what you're most proud to show off when people come to your community, what visitors say when they're visiting you about your community, areas you want to focus on, lots of different opportunities to sort of imagine what's possible. Most people say they really enjoy taking these surveys. It's a chance to look at their community through a different lens and to think about the reputation of the community and how they want the outside world to see the city. So we hope you'll enjoy it. We do want to warn you, take some time, take some quiet time to take it. If you don't have an opportunity to take it from home or you need assistance in any way, language, questions about it, or you'd rather take it on a printed piece of paper rather than on a computer, there are folks at the library and the visitor center here in the city who are standing by ready to help. And we want to make sure every voice is heard. So if there's something that you need and it's not immediately available to you, please let us know so that we can make sure that you can weigh into this process. Again, we want you to go to the welcomelancaster.com website. You can go there right away. The survey is now up as of tonight. Postcards will start arriving in mailboxes tomorrow, and they'll probably make it to every mailbox by Friday or Saturday of this week. So if you don't get your postcard, make sure you go to welcomelancaster.com and take that survey anyway, but it should be on its way already. So we move to the next one. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer anything that we certainly can. I'm Jennifer Eddy, but also Chayla Hutner is the project sponsor, and she's the Bureau Chief of Tourism and Promotion. She just introduced me, and her contact information is here as well. So either one of us would be happy to address any questions here tonight or to field any follow-up questions as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any preliminary questions from council members?
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, where have you guys done other tourism master plans? And if so, what were some of the outcomes and what were the similarities that you saw from their communities to a city like Lancaster?
Yeah, so the most recent one we did, was in the city of Danville, Virginia. That's a community that was a mill town, a textile mill town for many, many years, and was not really focused on tourism. And in the last couple of years, they've had some major investments come in from some different tourism entities, and that sort of made them look at tourism in a new lens as an economic development opportunity for them. They hired a tourism director and started with a master plan. So we finished that just about, May of last year. And so that was the most recent one. It was a similar size community in terms of population and households, diversity, things like that. Another city we worked on, probably the one just precursing to that, was the city of Eureka, California, which is a smaller city, but is very similar in its makeup to you all in terms of land size and being a bit landlocked. It's already built out. There wasn't an opportunity necessarily to, build an amusement park on an old farm or some of the things that you sometimes see in these tourism planning engagements. It was really about reimagining the assets that you have, the outdoor recreation assets like you are doing with the Conestoga River project, but also looking at what is it that the community wants, really weighing how much tourism is what we want, how much is the economic benefit versus maybe potential parking challenges, those kinds of things. So really weighing out what the community wants and then mapping to that the opportunities that are out there for economic development and positive impact in the community is something that we specialize in, and we're excited to do it here in Lancaster.
Thank you. And just my follow-up question is,
Sure.
Lancaster has a thriving lodging and service industry right here in the city. How do you guys plan to make sure that all stakeholders have an equitable choice, whether they're or input, whether they're a small business owner or a hotel or a restaurant? How are we going to diversify the table to make sure everybody has a seat?
Yeah, so in terms of the recommendations, that's going to come sort of once we hear from the community. And the first piece of equity is that we want every voice at the table. So the survey will be sent to every household and every business. We want everyone to participate. We also have segmentation questions in there. So part of why the survey is so long is we're asking questions like, do you own a business? What neighborhood are you in? We want to make sure every zip code and every ward is represented. If we've got a hole in our data, then we can't make good, solid decisions based off of that. We can't make assumptions based off of it. So we want to make sure everybody weighs into the process about what success looks like first. Then once we have that data, we have several different focus groups. So lodging will absolutely be one. Small businesses will be another. So there'll be lots of different inputs where we can have deeper conversations with community leaders and representatives to talk about specific aspects of what we're hearing back. We'll also share all this data back in public community meetings that anyone can attend. And we're literally going to share the questions and the answers that came through the survey, and then any anomalies we see, if there's different segments of the community that felt different from each other, we'll point that out and have a discussion in those rooms about why that might be, so that we can really understand what it is that the community wants, where there are inequities that might need to be addressed, or where tourism might be able to support that. And only then can I make recommendations about exactly what that means and what the programs are. But that's where we're headed, and hopefully a year from now we'll have some much more actionable advice.
Thank you, and I look forward to the process. That concludes my questions, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any other questions from the council at this time? Thank you. I know that there may be some questions from the public, and you have made yourself available. I will at this point ask if there are any questions or comments from the public that would like to be made during the meeting, and then I will also ask Taylor, and Jennifer, if you could stand by for just a little bit for anyone who would like to privately ask anything at this point. But briefly, we'll have time for just a comment or two, understanding that we have a really large agenda to follow this evening. So is there anyone who'd like to make a public question? Please come on up.
My name is Jonathan Brown, 200 block of North Lime Street. I just want to ask a really simple question. This is very exciting. Lancaster City for many years has had a number of organizations that are really nonprofit organizations that are really working on the growth, such as Lancaster City Alliance. I just wanted to, and they've gathered tremendous data and have their plans and things like that. You didn't mention that, so I just wanted to affirm that all of that experience, data, all of that already exists is going to be fed into this system, and we're not starting from scratch.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Sorry, just so everyone can hear me. So we actually had a wonderful webinar earlier today with many city partners, including the Lancaster City Alliance and many others, to ask for their support for the project, to engage them in various ways. They'll be helping to promote the survey, so you'll see the social posts that are coming out through their networks and through their newsletters and things like that as well. Many of them have also offered information, data access, use of their rooms and their facilities so that we can have meetings at those spaces. So it's just the beginning, but I feel really excited and hopeful that we'll have some really strong partnerships in the months ahead.
Thank you for that.
Darlene Bird, 200 block of South Ann Street. My question is for council. Who pays for the consultant, or where is that coming out of what part of the budget, or is there a grant for that, or how does that happen?
Yes, so earlier in the presentation, Jennifer mentioned the funding came largely through
Two sources.
Foundation and the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. I don't have the figures in front of me, but perhaps Dr. Carrasco, you could speak a little bit more into the detail of that.
I just wanted to know where it came from. I missed that part. The other question that I had was, we just did a comprehensive plan where we gathered all this information, and that's why I was concerned about the consultant. I think he just spoke on it too, all the information we've been gathering. Did the 10-year comprehensive plan not address any of these issues? That we're doing it again?
Appreciate that, Dr. Carrasco. Just to dig into the difference between the two and how they will also connect.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Bird. So the comprehensive plan did provide engagement response and data, and the tourism plan is diving deeper into some of that engagement. We are incorporating, actually, Lancaster City Alliance is part of our internal working group, so I'm glad that you brought them up. They are a very important partner in this process. And so we are looking at different plans that have happened in the city in the past and incorporating that data, both from the comprehensive plan and various other plans that are in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I asked that question because when the comprehensive plan was developed, there was a concern about where we were gathering our information from, what part and what segments of the cities was participating in that, and wanted to make sure we don't gather all this information just from one source. If you're doing something new, are you going to get new information that was not gathered in these other, like the Lancaster Alliance or the comprehensive plan?
Thank you very much, Ms. Bird. I would say if you have a moment to connect with Jennifer before she leaves this evening, to make sure that if you have resources or organizations that would be helpful to connect with, to make sure that they are on that list. Thank you. For any further questions in light of time this evening, and we don't typically take them for reports to council, but I know that this is an important one, I will direct you to Jennifer Eddy and Shayla Hutner, who are referenced here on the slide. If you have a moment and you wanted to step aside and speak to them privately, I'll ask that they do so in the hallway, but otherwise we'll move on to our next items, and I want to thank you all for being here and presenting this exciting development. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda this evening are reports of committees of council. These were the meetings held on February 5th, 2024. We'll begin with the Public Safety Committee and Councilor Diaz.
The Public Safety did not meet.
Thank you very much. Public Works Committee, Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Madam President. The Public Works Committee did meet. We had one agenda item, which is Administration Bill number 02-2024, amending the City Tree Ordinance, which will come up on our agenda later this evening, and that concludes the report of the Public Works Committee.
Thank you very much. Finance Committee, Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. The Finance Committee committee did meet during the last session. We discussed resolutions number 4, 2024, and resolution number 5, 2024, both of which will appear later this evening on the agenda. That concludes my report, Council President.
Thank you very much. In place of Councilor Craig, I will make the report for the Community Planning Committee. They discussed 3 resolutions, all of which will appear on the agenda later this evening, resolutions. Those are resolution number 6, authorizing the transfer of funding from the Enterprise Loan Fund to our Critical Repair Fund. Resolution number 7, authorizing a cooperation agreement for grant funding with the Lancaster City Housing and Redevelopment Authority and Lancaster General Hospital. And Administration Resolution number 9, which is amending the sewer control plan to include the project at 802 and 820 South Duke Street. Additionally, the Community Planning Committee heard an update on plans for Price Elementary School, the Lancaster Recreation Commission, and Brandon Park. No council action was taken at that time. And that concludes the Community Planning report. And lastly, we have the Personnel Committee, Councilor Caliste.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee did meet on February 5th and reviewed nominations to the Historical Commission and the Board of Plumbing Examiners. That concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Calise. We will now move into our legislative agenda for this evening, which actually begins with those nominations for appointment. Councilor Calise.
Also, Council President, just to.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The Economic Committee did not meet.
Thank you. I missed you on my list, and I apologize. Thank you for correcting me. All right, we will now move to our legislative agenda, which does begin with those nominations for appointment. Councilor Calise.
Thank you, Madam President. And now I move to approve the appointments of Luis Lobello to the Historical Commission for a term from February 13, 2024 to December 31st, 2026. And Eric Wise to the Board of Plumbing Examiners for a term from February 13, 2024 to September 12, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any council comments on the appointments? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Madden. Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
President Baker.
Aye. Our next item are the legislative budget transfers. Councilor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight we'll present some legislative transfers. As you're aware, the city is self-insured for workers' compensation costs. Every year, funds to pay workers' compensation claims are included in the individual department budgets, but those claims are paid from the administrative services budget. So each quarter, we shift money from the departments where those injured workers have made claims to the administrative services budget to cover the costs. For the fourth quarter of 2023, workers' comp claims were made by city police officers. A total of $6,799.53 is being moved from the police bureau budget to administrative services. Because this money is being moved between departments, this requires city council approval. So I'll make a motion to approve the fourth quarter workers' compensation transfers totaling $6,799.53 as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the legislative transfers. Any council comments on those? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Madden. Mr. Roy. Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. We'll now move on to ordinances for first reading. I'm going to say it twice to remind myself that these are first reads this evening. We won't be taking action on them. We'll begin with Administration Bill Number 1. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, requiring the city to obtain and maintain a welcoming city rating of no less than 3 stars from Welcoming America, codifying the city's practices related to the provision of city services without regard to refugee or immigration status, and requiring city council to advocate for the adoption of similar practices and policies by other municipalities, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And the copy of the agenda that I'm looking at has my name on it, but the actual draft of the ordinance does have Councilor Arroyo's name on it. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. I went into more detail during the committee session, and I'll plan to do so at the next council meeting. But this bill was originally introduced to us through the advocacy efforts of CASA, our local chapter here, as a way to make the city of Lancaster a more welcoming and safe environment for new residents. And really for everyone. And through the practices that were existing here in Lancaster City, we took initiative of drafting an ordinance that codified a lot of the practices that our departments across the entire city to put into policy, as well as to put into an ordinance or into policy that we designate ourselves, or that we become a designated welcoming city with a minimum of 3 stars, requiring us to pursue that certification. So this is a really great opportunity to not only set the example for other municipalities to follow, but really show that All of our neighbors, whether documentation status here in Lancaster City, are welcomed and are safe here in the city of Lancaster. Council President, I believe we do have some members here from CASA that are interested in speaking, if it's okay to have public comment on the first reading.
Absolutely. I'll ask first, before we do that, for any other council comments on the ordinance. Okay, then hearing none, go ahead, Councilor Rowe.
Thank you. Members of
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Sirachi. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Again, once again, CASA is here to support the passing of Administration Bill Number 1, establishing provision for welcoming and providing access to city government to new immigrants and refugees. I share with you that there's a lot of excitement coming from the CASA members and from the immigrant community, and that they truly feel heard, respected, and seen. One CASA member shared, "For me, it would be an achievement that my family and I have been waiting for, since it would allow us to walk without fear, to go to public places and government offices and feel free, and that our information is secure. Achieving the support and implementation of the Lancaster Trust Act will give a better sense of the quality of life in this beautiful city. With the current unfavorable," I use that word to be nice, climate towards immigrants echo through places such as Texas and Florida, and unfortunately here in some other jurisdictions in Pennsylvania, Lancaster City has torn down walls and eliminated barriers and has created bridges for its community to thrive. This bill is yet another stepping stone that provides and enhances equitable opportunities for all. Rather than divide, it brings us closer together. It embraces our differences and encourages all to come as they are. I want to share something that Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1963 while he was in the Birmingham jail. He wrote in a letter, "We are caught in an inseparable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and that anyone who lives inside the United States could never be considered an outsider." Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King was specifically addressing his circumstances and some of the accusations that were made towards him, that he was an outside agitator who had come to Birmingham to make trouble. But his words go far and beyond that. It reaches a broader vision of inclusivity, which is what I'm here talking about today, that all who come to this country is part of its fabric and should be treated as so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make comment on this ordinance this evening? Again, this is a first reading, so we will take it up at our next meeting. Hearing none, thank you all so very much for being here and being a part of this process. We look forward to the vote at our next meeting. Next item for first reading this evening. I've lost my place on my agenda. There we go. It's bill number 2, Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Lancaster City Council amending Chapter 273 of the Code of the City of Lancaster, trees, to add a definition for encroaching tree and provide for permits under Chapter 273 to be issued by the Department of Public Works, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Council President. So again, this is a first reading for this ordinance. So I will summarize what the bill does and then turn it back. So, and Director Stephen Campbell, Public Works, is here on standby to answer any questions as well. This ordinance is primarily to ensure that our tree ordinance as it exists becomes consistent with court rulings that have occurred in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in regards to an encroaching tree. So the ordinance does three primary things. It defines an encroaching tree, in this case, a tree that is in a neighboring property's yard and has branches and or woody materials that encroach onto a neighboring property. Pennsylvania courts have in the past ruled this as trespass and a violation of private property rights. And so this ordinance would essentially align us with common law. It also allows the Department of Public Works to be the issuer of permits in regards to the tree ordinance. And it changes some of the language around who issues permits in that sense. And then also requires that anyone that has work performed on what is defined as an encroaching tree, they have a sketch plan that will show the impact of the health of the tree, and that is required to have a permit issued. Director Campbell, I missed any. He's saying, he's going to say something.
Director Campbell, thank you so much for being here this evening.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for that. I do want to reinforce and clarify a couple of aspects of the proposed tree ordinance. First and foremost, I want to make sure that people do recognize that the city of Lancaster is a tree city. We are very much in favor of the tree canopy. We've received $1.5 million over the course of the last year or so to augment that tree canopy, and we've put in place the urban forester position a couple of years ago. It is now vacant, and we are in the process of filling that position. This ordinance also strengthens certain aspects of the existing tree ordinance, partly as Councilmember Hirsch had mentioned. Some of the strengthenings are to make sure that the definition of an encroaching tree is clear, but also to make sure that there are provisions that require any permitting to be in accordance with the tree manual, which is something that was not clear in the previous ordinance. To include a sketch plan, as Councilor had mentioned, include a sketch plan showing the location of the tree, portions of the tree to be impacted by the work, and the property lines of the site, and also to ensure that any permitting or of trimming of the tree is only within the area of the affected property or the trespassed property. The challenge that we have as we're trying to protect our tree canopy is the fact that there are a number of trees or instances that legally trespass other properties. And under common law, which is for most intents and purposes the supreme law and consistent with Pennsylvania law, we must be able to address those trespasses. We must not have a law that supports the trespass of properties or trees, in this case, against other properties. The provisions of the provisions that I indicated are also making it a requirement that any trimming or trimming of the trees, whether it's a shade tree, a protected tree, or an encroaching tree, a protected tree being a tree of a certain dimension, 12 inches diameter at what's called the breast height, within 20 feet of the public right-of-way, or 24 inches in any part of any property, private property or not, that we must require a permit for that work to be done. And in requiring that permit, the permit addresses being able to protect the health of the tree to the extent practical and the public safety of property and people as well in doing that permitting. The last key thing that I want to make clear is that we as a municipality have very limited powers compared to the state legislature. Even third-class cities operating under the optional charter law are considered creatures of the legislature with no powers not expressly granted by that body. Our legal research has found no reported cases where a municipal ordinance has been held to defeat a common law right. So recognizing that our ordinance was in conflict with common law and Pennsylvania state law, and this is a situation that is not an unusual situation. It's not unusual for Lancaster, not unusual for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and not uncommon for many municipalities throughout the nation. We needed to find the way of addressing this often egregious situation where there is a trespass, but try to the greatest extent possible to protect the trees when those permits are required. So I just wanted to make those points as clear as possible. We become subject to a variety of lawsuits if our ordinances remain in conflict with common law.
Thank you, Director Campbell, for that additional context.
Thank you,
Council President.
Yes. So again, I'll reiterate its first read this evening. Are there any additional council comments on the ordinance at this time?
I do have a few comments, President.
Councilor Diaz.
According to this amendment, I find and I believe that the amendment has not been fully reviewed. I have it needs a deeper discussion, especially trying to change one law to accommodate some project as an oversight. Second of all, as I know, the director of planning that was fired, who was let go, who was a Muslim immigrant, and unfortunately, he is the only provider with a sick child, explained that he was following the law by protecting the city tree ordinance. And right now, I feel that we need to table this, we need to have further discussion, and I believe that the community have the right to know every aspect of this ordinance. We can't just throw this for the next reading, which would be the following meeting, in order for it to be voted on. So I make a motion at this time to move this to March the 12th, so like that we can have more input, especially the constituents that are living within that area that are being affected by certain particular trees that could cost the city between $31 to maybe even $50,000 if anybody touches it. I mean, we have to be a little bit more understanding that our community, our taxpayers, have the right to know what's really happening. And for somebody that loses their job because they're following the law, that's incomprehensible. That's not welcoming to me.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. I want to just be clear that you're making a motion to table this until March 20th. Is that correct? 12th. Thank you very much. And Mr. Harris, are we able to take that action on a first read as our parliamentarian?
Actually, not on the first reading, and it's not on the table for action, therefore we cannot move it to the table for inaction.
Thank you for that clarification. I was unsure of that. So Councilor Diaz, we're not able to take a motion on that at this time, but during our action meeting, which would be the next meeting, we could hear a motion to that effect if you wish.
That's in a couple of weeks.
That's our next, yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any additional council comments on the ordinance? Councilor Ahmed.
Council President, thank you. Thank you, Director Campbell. And I understand that we have to be in full compliance with Pennsylvania common law. If you could just reiterate the process so we all understand. If, my neighbor has a tree encroaching in my yard, do I still have to get a permit from the city, or could I just get a chainsaw and cut what's coming?
Oh, please don't go just get a chainsaw and start chopping away.
The confusion and misinformation the public has kind of been, and we're just, in my opinion, I'm hoping that this won't resolve into neighborly disputes.
Well, that would certainly be my hope as well, but generally speaking, for any mature tree on private property, on public property, that is a protected tree, which is 12 inches in diameter DBH within 20 feet of a public right-of-way, or 24 inches DBH any other place on any property, private or public, one must have a permit to be able to prune that tree. Most mature trees often require it. I have a tree on my property that last year required pruning. It was not overstepping other people's properties. It was not leaning in that way. But the intention is that you get the permit to be able to get it pruned. Every licensed arborist or pruning company in Lancaster is very well aware of the requirements. Most will not do the work without getting that permit in place, but then the permit recommends not only that it be in compliance with the tree manual, which talks about what are healthy ways of pruning the variety of trees, but also not only to protect the health of the tree to the greatest extent possible, but also to protect property and public health. With that permit in hand, if you have your own private tree or a tree on your property that you're about to prune, you would go ahead and prune it after you get that permit.
Thank you. That clears some of my question. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any other council comments or questions? All right. Councilor Cleese.
Thank you, Madam President. Director Campbell, who is responsible for the cost, for example, if a tree affects a neighboring property, damages the roof or going out in power lines? Who's going to cover the cost?
If you are the owner of the tree, whether it's an encroaching tree or not, you are responsible for the damages created by that tree. If you are pruning the tree, if it's your tree on your property, you're responsible for those costs. If you are pruning the tree of a neighbor's property and you get the permission from that neighbor to do so, you are responsible. You, the one pruning the adjacent property's tree, pay for that as well. However, if it is the case that your pruned tree continues to damage other property, you as the owner of the tree are responsible for those damages.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I may.
Councilor Diaz.
Who's responsible then for the cost of the permits?
The person making the application for the permit.
Thank you.
And can you clarify, to follow up on that, and both of these questions, if the permit seeker is not the owner of the tree, what is the process for obtaining approval from the owner of the tree currently?
That, to be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure. Ordinarily, under the old ordinance, it is that you seek the written permission from the property owner. The challenge that creates is that if a property owner does not wish to give that permission, the trespassing tree is still in violation, is still trespassing the adjacent property. And so the challenge that we have is that our ordinance does not allow us to enforce our ordinance. What the amendment, what the changes in the ordinance does is address the trespass so that we are not in conflict with the common law, which forbids the trespass.
Thank you. Any other councilor, please?
Thank you, Madam President. It's related to the same question. Does the ordinance address the cost? You have just explained.
I'm sorry?
Does the amendment of the ordinance address the cost?
Yes, it does. In the permitting section, which I think is 273-11, that talks about the procedures for permitting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
All right. Again, this is the first reading this evening. I will now open it up to comments from the public. If you're making comment this evening on this ordinance, please do so at the podium. Begin with your name and block of residence for the meeting record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Good evening, council members, neighbors, mayor. I would like to take this opportunity to address the proposed amendments to our existing tree ordinance as presented to you for consideration.
Please make sure you have with your name.
Oh, sorry, Michelle LaGrassa, 600 block of West Chestnut Street. I believe the statement that is made with the amendment, that this amendment is to comply with state law, to be false and misleading. We are a Commonwealth state, and as such are afforded the ability by a city, township, or borough to enact such ordinances that we believe are in the best interest of our community. Please refer to PA Home Rule before making any type of considerations. If we were to take the city's logic at face value, then every ordinance that we have in place within the city of Lancaster would need to be reassessed or amended to comply with state law. For example, Lancaster City currently has an ordinance to decriminalize recreational marijuana in certain amounts, making it only a summary offense and a fine. This ordinance completely contradicts both state and federal law. Is it illegal? Should this ordinance be dismantled to comply? Should we now go back and charge all offenders as outlined in the state law criminally? If we were to pass this ordinance as written, does it open the city up to lawsuits and liability to pass applications that were denied? Who exactly is paying for the trimmed trees? The Director of Public Works is incorrect. The way the current state law reads, under the current state law, the trimming is a responsibility of the owner of the tree, and the owner can be sued for reimbursement. Does the proposed ordinance open the city up to lawsuits and liabilities for neighbors, both residential and commercial, as well as developers that were forced to spend tens of thousands of dollars complying with the original illegal ordinance? Does passing this amendment open the city up to liability regarding any other ordinance that is deemed to be illegal by this administration? I would say yes, it most certainly does. The proposed amendment has been rushed for review and approval. Why now? Why the urgency on this particular tree ordinance? Is this change retroactive back to the beginning of time? Does it outline permits that have already been applied for and denied through the Shade Tree Commission? There is no clear outline other than to state that the current ordinance goes against state law. This proposed change would detrimentally affect personal property that can be destroyed at will regardless of condition. I can encourage all members of the council as well as the public to read and understand the language within this proposal. It's my understanding that any tree for which is deemed to be encroaching or trespassing may be trimmed without the permission of the owner. It does not outline trees, he did clarify, that exceed the 12 to 23 inches in diameter that are currently deemed protective trees. There is no safeguards in place to protect the current urban landscape, which is what Lancaster City is known for. I encourage council to take a walk in the city streets and see how many trees this would or could adversely affect. I would encourage you to take note of every tree that currently encroaches or is trespassing on neighboring properties, both in the front, side, and rear of that property. But all,
just final thoughts.
Yep, but all properties within the city. The proposed amendments as written will ultimately be the demise and destruction of our current urban landscape. In turn, could cost homeowners thousands of dollars in reimbursement costs while destroying personal property and jeopardizing the beauty which makes up our urban landscape. Thank you.
Members of council, I believe Ms. LaGrassa has given her comments in full. I just want to make a note since you did do that for us this evening.
I did.
Mayor Sarachi.
Just a question for Ms. De La Grassa. Am I saying your name correctly?
Mrs. LaGrassa.
Mrs. La Grassa. Are you an attorney by trade?
Actually, I have a degree in law and policy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public on this ordinance? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Dina Mayonis, the 500 block of East Chestnut Street.
She's going to be speaking for me because I have a post-COVID asthma thing that if I talk for too long, I start coughing, and it's insane. So
Thank you.
Some people consider that a blessing.
So I'm speaking this evening on behalf of Laurie Ulrich, North Shipping Street. The proposed change to the city ordinance is not just an attempt to mask the unfair firing of a member of the Planning Commission whose sin was refusing to sign off on killing a perfectly healthy 85-year-old American elm tree. It's motivated by greed, designed to allow businesses to chop down existing trees, to simplify their development plans, and to allow the permitted butchering of trees on private property. This change to the ordinance eliminates all Shade Tree Commission power to protect trees and will result in Lancaster City losing countless beautiful trees, many of which have been carefully and lovingly tended by residents for decades. To remind everyone, the stated purpose of the Shade Tree Commission and the existing tree ordinance is to, and I quote, "acknowledge the urban forest as a necessary part of the city's infrastructure. This green infrastructure provides numerous crucial ecosystem services to the city, including environmental, stormwater management, carbon sequestration, carbon sequestration and urban wildlife habitat, social, human health, healing, and quality of life, and economic, increased property values, increased business activity, and decreased energy use. The increased creation of urban land over time, coupled with the challenges inadequately maintaining the urban forest and tree canopy, has created a need to further protect and conserve this valuable city resource. Apparently, none of these things are important to the current city government. Mayor Sirachi, I worked with you as a board member for Live Green, an organization created to improve sustainability and protect the natural beauty of our city. It was a springboard for such initiatives as Save It, created to help the city conserve water, and Tree Vitalize, which counts amongst its partners the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the PA Urban Community Forestry Council. Its purpose is to align with the Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership's goal to plant 10 million new trees by the end of 2025. 70% of those trees will protect the Chesapeake Bay, an ecosystem that Lancaster City stormwater currently threatens. Pennsylvania's overall tree canopy, which directly affects the quality of our air and helps protect our watershed and prevent runoff, is deficient. And encouraging the killing and removal of trees of all species, ages, and sizes, especially in an urban setting, will only make things worse. What's happened to your priorities? I am saddened and angered by the blatant disregard for the beauty of our city, for the environmental impact of this change to the ordinance, and frankly, the attempt by the mayor and city council to get this change passed without public scrutiny. The changes to the ordinance and their true intent are shameful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayonis.
Darlene Bird, 200 block of South Ann Street. I'm trying to understand what I heard. My first question would be, as a homeowner, and the tree is hanging over my property, you're telling me that if this ordinance passed, I would not be able to cut the branches that are damaging my roof of my neighbor's tree without paying for a permit, which would require getting an arborist to do it versus maybe my neighbor that got a chainsaw that can cut off a limb. Is that correct?
You are currently,
Ms. Bird, I want to give you the opportunity to use all of your time. If you have anything else, and then I'll get.
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of questions. Okay.
Respond.
Are you taking note? Okay. The other question and concern is that we talked about the tree commission. Why have a tree commission if they're not going to have the rights or the authority? The tree commission is appointed by council. Once again, you're giving up rights for the Department of Public Works to have to say. I don't think that is something that's good or should be done. I think that in the home rule, we talked about tree taxes and everybody laughed. But when you look at this and you're talking about the fees that are going to be associated to the homeowner, maybe you're not calling it a tax, but that's basically what it is. Because now people have to pay to get the tree off of their own property. I mean, we talk about, what about existing trees? Mayor, I can say to you, we dealt with trees in the 500 block of East End Avenue that are huge trees in the backyards of people that are hanging over. It's going to cost, what, 40, 50,000? There's not even a truck that we know can get in there to try to cut these trees down. What happens to those people? What happens, like people, my neighbor, who couldn't even afford to trim their tree, but it was on my property? But they were living on an income, low income, and couldn't even afford to trim the tree. And now you're saying that we got to go get permission? Are you giving owners who don't have tree a say on whether or not their neighbor puts a tree in their yard that's going to overgrow into their property? Do we have a say in that? Or are we just stuck with a tree that's planted here that comes on my property, and now I have to pay to get it cut down or get it trimmed?
Thank you, Ms. Bird. Director Campbell will allow you the opportunity to respond to ask questions.
thank you. I'd like to make a couple of clarifications. First, the trees of certain size require a permit currently, in the current ordinance. It's not a new imposition of a new permit requirement. Mature trees of any sort are required to have permits for pruning. Secondly, the protected trees that we're talking about are generally the trees that are in the private sector. They are not under the jurisdiction of the Shade Tree Commission. So this is a different category of tree that we're talking about. The jurisdiction of the Shade Tree Commission allows for a variety of negotiation, et cetera, which has been successful not only with the properties that we're talking about, but also other properties throughout the city. And third, just a minor clarification, there was a reference to the imposition of a charge if you are trimming the tree of your neighbor, and I had made reference to who pays for that. There is an entitlement, there's an ability for the entity whose tree is trespassing to be required to pay for it. It's not mandatory, but it is an elective that the person whose tree is trespassing may be required to pay for that cost, for removal of the trespass.
Thank you for those clarifications, Dr. Campbell.
Doesn't matter.
There are additional comments on the ordinance for tonight's first
It was still yellow when I sat down, but go ahead.
Ms. Berger, if you have direct questions, I would ask.
I was going to say, and if they can't afford that, you say it's an elective. So if your neighbor can't afford that, what happens?
There's grant money, right?
Actually, there is, Dina. We have fundraised to help neighbors who've had to remove trees that have been, that have died, that have threatened the safety of people who are coming in and out of their house or their house themselves. It is a costly endeavor, and we are trying to strike a balance between maintaining these trees that are largely on private property that are large, as well as our shade trees. And we also recognize that there are costs that are involved with that. It is also part of why we have a sidewalk repair loan program to help support costs that are associated with repairing sidewalks as they are affected by our trees. The answer is not to cut down all the trees. That is not what this ordinance is about. And I believe that, again, we are trying to accomplish something that is challenging because we live in close proximity to one another. Our yards are right up against one another. Over time, trees do encroach on a neighbor's yard, and we are trying to figure out the appropriate way to be able to deal with that encroachment when it is that private property owner's right to do with their property as they wish. And we also have to have protections in there as well.
And the only other thing I would say to council is I hope we plan on education. We talked about this plan that the city has to plant more trees. And I know we had 14 trees planted. We got lots of awards for South End Street. And if neighbors knew what they were getting into, having to be responsible for their sidewalks, having to be responsible for the roots that went into their pipes and infiltrated their pipes and their water pipes, we need an educational piece. We talk about why it's so good to have trees, but this end of the cost of it never gets to the person that's planting a tree.
Thank you, Ms. Berg. Further public comments. Thank you very much.
Sure. Nicholas Myers, first block of Locust Street. I'm the chair of the Shade Tree Commission, but these words are my own. I don't know for how many of the commission I speak, as I was just informed of this potential amendment a few days ago, but I suspect it's probably all of them. I understand that you might feel obligated to make these changes under common and state law. I get it, I really do. But amending the ordinance to label trees across property lines as trespassing is short-sighted, unimaginative, antithetical to the city's own goals, and just extends the reach of poor laws and bad state legal precedent. I also strongly suspect it was fomented by a developer who knew or should have known what their building limits were, but ignored those they found inconvenient and just decided to strong-arm their design into the site. But the impact will be much broader than just this one site. In a city with many small properties, like Lancaster, this amendment could decimate large trees, many of which are private. I live in the 7th Ward, which has many narrow streets with limited spaces to plant, on the street especially. Most of the space we have in our neighborhood is in our yards, and there are some big trees in those yards. However, those yards are small. One tree close to me spreads over 13 yards. 13. Under this amendment, any one of those properties could potentially prune this tree, including the roots, and potentially kill it. The actions that one landowner could remove the benefits of 12 other families, 12 other properties. 12. Is that okay? Is it fair or just to the other families? I don't think it is, and I strongly suggest that the city find ways to resolve questions about development in private trees that doesn't result in the loss of a significant amount of private canopy in the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myers.
It's going to be rapid fire. Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. Council, I've come to you today as someone trying to understand, as someone who's looking for details, because from where I stand, I currently have not seen the case law that creates the common law argument that would justify us backing off on our tree protections. I feel we are transacting one value for another, and what we need is systemic change. Clearly, our ordinance is doing its job of protecting trees. And if it wasn't, and a property owner felt so strongly under a ruling such as Jones v. Wagner, they had the right to remove a tree, then why not simply do so? I believe it is because they recognize the merits of our existing ordinance and have concern that they would be sued for their non-compliance with the existing tree ordinance. I can't avoid mentioning it. I have tried reaching out beforehand. You already know there's a specific concern with the tree in the area of 213 College Avenue. It is my understanding that the city has given this project funds, unfortunately without the details I hope for. This is giving me the impression that we are not changing the law because of common law. We are changing this ordinance so the project can move forward. I want more education. So, back to the matter of why I do not think this is an issue of common law yet. Without being a lawyer, I have looked over other cases such as Payne v. Kassab, Borough of Music versus PAPUC, and Butler Township Board of Supervisors versus the PA Department of Environmental Resources. While these cases involve a municipality, well, some of these cases involve a municipality, and none of the claims appear to challenge a municipality's right to have tree protections. Payne v. Kassab set a standard known as the Payne test, and I believe we may win if a property owner or developer challenged the merits of such protections. At this time, without the details I seek, as a city resident, I understand there are risks and will welcome a legal challenge. I understand the goals we hope to achieve, but they are short-term. We need systemic change on the issue of affordable housing. Councilors, you all as city residents should also be challenging the Planning Commission, of which I am an alternate member, to help create the systemic change. We would be unraveling one positive systemic change to provide short-term solution if this ordinance gets passage as is. If this ordinance change is not backed off of, I believe the residents of the city have the right to advocate for the rights of living things that cannot speak for themselves. We should consider invoking the third-class city codes chapter 110 subchapter C and begin the process that would force reconsideration of ordinance to the point of making a public referendum. If we are going to change this ordinance and essentially remove the protections that we are currently holding true to at this moment, then we as a city collectively should vote on what would be the changing of our values. We do not have to make this trade. SAP does not have to be on the city's hands. I feel we need more collective cooperation and conversation before making this change. Please, let's have more detailed explanation, education, and let's seek compromise. While a permit would be required under these amendments, Section 8 of the amendment specifies nothing therein shall prevent. I am the gold goose and I speak for the trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take any further public comment on this ordinance this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Bill Hannigan, 300 block of College Avenue. I support those who want a pause, who want to have further discussion, open and transparent about this Amendment 2, 2024. This was sprung, I feel, in no way with the necessary preliminary discussion or awareness. I understand this came up in a public meeting or a work session last Monday. It was revealed surprisingly to members of the Planning Commission on Wednesday. My jaw dropped, and I think most of the members of the Planning Commission, their jaws dropped as well when the city planner revealed what was to be brought forth in this amendment. The wording of the amendment, as I saw it prior to this meeting, and what I heard tonight are different. There was more muscle and heart, as Mr. Campbell explained. I appreciate that. But to me, in a worst case scenario, this looks like the tree that is in question can be sawn, the roots can be clawed, and it's bill thy neighbor. That's really how I understand it as a worst case scenario. If you're offended by that tree and you take action as a property owner, you and your neighbors are going to come into conflict. And that's how I read this law, build thy neighbor. And I'm totally opposed to that. I would like further discussion, checks and balances. I appreciate the member of the Shade Tree Commission was here tonight to speak, and commission will convene next Tuesday. And I think that's the next very important meeting to attend. I beg you, do not take action on this in a rushed way. Be careful. Be listening. There's a challenge to, what status this rises to in terms of common law, or doesn't. There's the independence of the city to act as it has to this point, or it won't, and its values are undercut. I feel 210 and 217 of the saldo that I've stood on for more than 3 years in appearing before this council has just been taken away from me, totally gutted by this proposal. And I protest this proposal for having that threat as I see it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hannigan, thank you very much. Mr. McGran.
Hey, my name is John McGran, 600 block of West Chestnut Street. And I'm here to just say I support some action in this regard. For just one notable thing, I do appreciate the value of trees. I served for 9 years on the board of Lancaster Conservancy, 2 years as president of that organization. Very proud of the work that we did as that organization to protect wildlands and trees. So, I have a history of supporting that, but I think there's something with the way the ordinance reads right now is challenging. I realize there's certainly some impetus around this related to 213 College Avenue, but I'll sort of offer another anecdote, which is at my house in my backyard, my wife and I planted a small tree that she drove home in her van that she bought for $50, about 3 feet from the property line. And that tree is now 40 feet tall. It's trespassing on our neighbor's property. Our neighbors are trying to do a pair of small projects, one small addition, one garage that they want to build, and our tree is becoming a problem for them. They have encountered a number of roadblocks, some of which are related to the fact that they're trying to implement the stormwater mitigation that they need to be able to do those two projects to be, to be successful at the city's guidance. But our tree is causing problems with that. We don't want our tree to cause problems. We want them to be able to do these projects. We don't think, honestly, what we're realizing is we shouldn't have planted this tree in this spot. We planted a tree that we didn't think was going to get this big, too close to a property line in a pretty dumb place. And, if we had known that at that time, we might have thought differently. We certainly didn't want to do so in a way that would create a problem in the future for a future neighbor. So, I think something needs to be addressed to improve the outcomes related to this. And I heard somebody earlier say that, this encourages people to destroy trees. I don't think anybody is trying to destroy it, wants to encourage the destruction of trees. So I just, something different needs to come out of this existing ordinance. I commend you for, figuring out what to do about that. And then as it relates to the project on College Avenue, I mean, I think we also have to be clear about what our values are. I mean, we need affordable housing. And if we're trying to choose between, 64 units of affordable housing and a tree, I think the city needs more affordable housing. And we have to be able to make those value-based decisions in a clear and productive way. So thanks for your thoughts and for your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Are there any further comments on the ordinance this evening? Right, hearing and seeing none. I'll remind everyone that we do have a second reading on our next meeting, and we can take actions on it at that time, and I encourage you to be there for that meeting as well. Thank you all very much for your participation. The next item on our agenda is resolutions, and we will begin with resolution number 4, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution authorizing the adoption of the City of Lancaster Supplemental Pension Plan, originally effective January 1st, 1987, as amended and restated January 1st, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution here is regarding the Conrad Siegel plan that the city has had since 1987. This is a reinstatement that will allow a few changes when we amend the plan, including a role in the department director for administrative services, as well as including the firefighters in the plan. Those are some of the changes there. Director Campbell is here. If there's anything that I might have missed, or wants to add anything.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo. Are there any council comments on the resolution? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt? Mr. Roy? Mr. Cleese? Ms. Diaz? Mr. Hirsch? President Bacon?
Aye. Next item is Administration Resolution Number 5. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster exonerating 2023 water charges in the amount of $54,748.86 and sewer charges in the amount of $65,449.09 for city-owned or related properties at 25 locations.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo again.
Thank you, Council President. This is a resolution that comes to council annually, and this is to cancel the water and sewer charges on city properties to prevent the city from paying itself. This specific resolution has two properties on the list that are not owned by the city. Those properties are the Lancaster Public Library, which the city supplies water and sewer services as an in-kind contribution, and the fire line of the Lancaster Airport. The city provides water to the airport fire line in exchange for the city's use of the airport's large snowblower equipment during significant snowstorms. So those are two additional properties outside of the normal city properties that we'll be canceling charges for in this resolution.
Thank you very much. Any council comments on the resolution? From the public?
Darlene, what are we getting from the library? We said we used the equipment from the airport, but what's the library doing that we're...
So we're doing this as an in-kind contribution to the library. So typically the city of Lancaster does support the library monetarily. So this counts as an in-kind contribution for their efforts.
So not necessarily a service they're providing, just in kind. And how much is it for the library?
I don't have those charges in front of me.
I'm trying to open up the list, but I'm having some internet issues myself. If anyone has
It's
that.
$1,227.40.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank you, Mayor.
knew it was on that list, but I can't open it. Any other comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese? Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch? And President Bacon?
Aye. Next item is Administration Resolution Number 6, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the movement of $250,000 from the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund to the Critical Repair Fund at tenfold.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I see that Rebecca Geiser has moved closer to the podium. Will you be able to speak on this evening? I will. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors, mayor. The resolution approves the movement of $250,000 from the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund to the Critical Repair Fund, which will be held at tenfold. Once approved, we will execute an agreement between the city and Tenfold Community Lending to administer these critical repair funds for the Critical Repair Loan Program. This program will provide low-interest loans to city homeowners earning less than 120% of the area median income for Lancaster to make urgent and critical repairs to their homes to be able to stay in their homes. We'd like to extend our gratitude and recognition to Tenfold for partnering with us on these loans to do the loan servicing, and Wilfred Bentley, Chief Community Investment Officer with Tenfold, is here with us. So thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for your contributions to the development of this program. Glad to take any questions from council about the critical repair loan program.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geiser, and I'm really excited to hear about this and appreciative of Tenfold stepping up and helping us administer this. I think in reviewing notes from the committee meeting, it was mentioned that this is obviously a really, administratively heavy lift to administer this. The city's not able to do, so we appreciate them stepping up to do that. Can you talk a little bit about when this will be put in place and when we can see this roll out for residents?
Sure. Program funds can be mobilized within 30 days of the execution of the agreement. Tenfold already has the infrastructure ready to do the loan servicing. We have lists of households who can utilize loans, who could potentially qualify for these loans, and we would anticipate being able to distribute all of these loan funds within the first 2 years of the program initially, and then more households as we recoup those loan payments and offer more loans as the years go on.
Thank you very much. Any council comments or questions on the resolution?
If I may, Council President.
Councilor Romero?
Just a thank you to Tenfold. I think just speaking from experience, while these loans are very small, they are very labor intensive. So very thankful for the partnership amongst the city and Tenfold to administer these and have a program like this, which is very much needed to keep quality and safe housing across the city accessible. So just wanted to thank our friends at Tenfold.
Thank you. Other council comments? Comments from the public on the resolution?
Hello again. I'm Jonathan Brown, 200 block of North Lime Street. I was really excited to see about this transfer and ultimately the program. I was reminded that way back in 2008 at the annual Lancaster County Chamber of Commerce annual dinner, they invited the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who is considered widely known, he's Bangladeshi, as the pioneer in micro-lending. Whether or not the financial world would actually call this micro-lending, that's how I see it, that it's really micro-lending. It's something that I've actually put into some of the surveys that are out there, is like, what can the city do to try to get really low interest loans available to people who just need $5,000, just need $2,500 or whatever to get something done. And this is just so exciting. I really appreciate it. I hope that other programs, which there probably are some that exist that I don't know, but that we continue to do that, because I think it really leverages the strength and character of our residents. Oftentimes lower income residents are thought, oh, they can't handle it. They can, they just can't get a loan that is manageable, that's small, because private banks don't do those kind of loans. They refuse. And I also want to just say, I think it's awesome that you're partnering with Tenfold. I've been for a couple years associated with Tenfold as just a donor, so I see their literature and stuff. They're just a real treasure for Lancaster in working tirelessly to work with residents to achieve equitable housing and financial security. I know all of you know it, but because this is public, I want the rest of the world to know that. They really focus on addressing critical housing needs, but also seek within all of their services to stabilize residents and assist them in becoming self-sufficient so they no longer need those supports and such, and it's really awesome. So I just wanted to do that, and since I have just one moment, I'm going to piggyback on my comments and just say I also want to commend City Council and the city on what they're doing to commemorate Nelson Polite Sr. I really look forward to the additional commemorations later, so I tag that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Darlene Bird, and I too am excited about Tenfold and the fact that the enterprise zone is giving money to critical repair. I do have a couple questions about the city's critical repair program. Will that no longer operate? I know through the city's critical repair program, people were able to get grants if they so qualified, or 0% interest loan through the program. I know for the longest time they have had a waiting list because of funds. Will that list of people be the first list that Tenfold gets to help address their issues? So they're my questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Byrd. Ms. Geiser, do you have answers to address those questions? I think they're excellent ones.
I do. Those are great questions. Thank you. We anticipate funding the critical repair program grants at least the current level and looking for additional funding for those grants as well. So this is a loan program in addition to that program. Also, the grant program is for low-income residents who have 80% annual median income, and this program will be provided to those who go up to 120% annual median income. So this is really an income level even a little bit higher than the grants. Also, this program will be available to those who have received a grant but may need a little bit additional funding, so they could get a small loan on top of the grant in order to complete the full project.
Ms. Geiser, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Councilor Diaz.
Quick question. In reference to applying for these grants, is there a stipulation, let's put it this way, any stipulations in regards to, let's say, a credit issue or anything like past bankruptcy? Because I'm thinking sometimes people that do live in low income and try to get certain applications, obviously banks, which is the major thing, they sometimes don't qualify because they've had, credit issues. So can you enlighten me?
Sure. There will be a loan underwriting process for these loans as well. I don't know all of the details of exactly who will be qualified and who will not be qualified, but there will be an underwriting process. What I understand from other programs of this type is that the repayment on these loans, because of the low monthly payment, is very high, and so they are lower risk even for those with lower credit scores or lower incomes. So the loan is intended to be more accessible to a wider population than traditional loans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Byrd, I didn't answer your second question, the waiting list, yes. If those individuals are interested in taking out a loan once the critical repair grant money has been expended, certainly they would be eligible to apply for those loan funds if they are interested.
And do they have money in the critical repair fund now?
Right now, we do not have any money in the critical repair, but we will be allocating, again, CDBG money once we get the CDBG funds in. So each year, we allocate a portion of the CDBG funds, and as I mentioned, we're also looking for additional funds to put into that critical repair, because as you mentioned, there is a waiting list, so we see a large need in our community.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments on the resolution?
If I may, Council President, just to say that we were visited by Regional Administrator from HUD and his colleague that serves Eastern Pennsylvania, and we emphasized again how important the CDBG funds, the home dollars, and so on are to maintaining our housing stock. And this partnership with Tenfold is really important because we know that just because you own a home doesn't mean that you have money in reserve to be able to absorb costs such as we've been discussing tonight even.
Yep. Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Madden? Mr. Arroyo? Mr. Cleese? Ms. Diaz? Mr. Hirsch? President Baker?
Thank you all. Our next item is Administration Resolution Number 7, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster authorizing the execution of a cooperation agreement between the City of Lancaster, the Redevelopment Authority, the County of Lancaster, and Lancaster General Hospital.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the resolution. I apologize, I'm not sure who's taking this one this evening. It is Director Tina Campbell. I have to remember I have to specify when I say Director Campbell. Still haven't got used to that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, this agreement is really a retroactive requirement from the PA Office of the Budget. So it is for the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, or the RACP program. Lancaster General Health was awarded a RACP grant back in 2018 for the work for the hospital expansion. The RACP program requires a municipality to actually serve as the grantee, or a municipal organization. And in this case, the Lancaster County Redevelopment Authority is serving as that grantee. But because the hospital is located in the city of Lancaster, they require a cooperative agreement to receive the reimbursement from that grant.
Thank you very much. So this is really more of a formality. This is already funds that were already distributed.
Correct. So the expansion has been done, and yeah, it's ready to be reimbursed.
Thank you very much. Are there any council comments on the resolution?
I have one comment, which is the grantee in this case is actually my employer, the Lancaster County Housing Redevelopment Authority. And because this amounts to payment of a fee to my employer, I've been asked to recuse myself from the vote. So I've made that intention known in writing to the city clerk, and I'm announcing it for this vote now.
Thank you very much. Additional council comments on the resolution? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Bennett. Aye. Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese. Aye. Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch. And President Bacon.
Aye. Thank you. And now we move on to Administration Resolution Number 9, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster approving the adoption of an amendment to the Act 537 Official Sewage Facilities Plan for the City of Lancaster.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is a similar resolution that we have done regularly here in council, requiring an amendment to the sewage facilities plan for any development. This is part of our consent decree, and we've done several of them here. What this establishes is that there is adequate capacity in our sewer for the projects that are proposed. This is usually very early in the development process, and this is for 802 and 820 South Duke Street, which I believe are SACA developments. I see our Chief Planner Douglas Smith is here. Is there anything that you'd like to add about this project or where it's at this point? I know, like I said, we do this very early on.
Good evening, councilors, and good evening, Mayor. So this project has submitted a sketch plan, land development, to city staff. So that is not a formal application, but it's an opportunity for us to sit down with the developer and raise any, major concerns for the project. So in this case, this is 48 market rate units in partnership with Vanguard. So SACA's partnering with a market rate developer on this project. And as I mentioned last time, there will be healthcare uses on the first floor. Fulton Bank will remain at the corner in a new structure, and 48 multifamily units on the upper floors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Are there any council comments on the resolution to adopt the sewage facilities plan? From the public?
Darlene Bird, South End Street. Did you say they do have enough sewage space for the development that's coming? Is that what you stated?
Yeah.
Thank you.
When these come before me, it means that they've been evaluated.
Okay.
Yep. Any additional council comments? Or from the public, rather? It's getting late. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Minnick. Aye. Mr. Roy. Aye. Mr. Cleese. Aye. Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Bacon.
Aye. All right, that concludes our legislative agenda this evening, and we will move to our second public comment period, open to items that were not previously on the agenda. I'm going back to my notes from earlier this evening, and I do believe we did have some folks that were, had called ahead, but were not here. I don't think that they're here now, but I want to check. Is Austin Mountain or Elaine Attore here? Please begin with your name and block of residence for our meeting record.
My name's Austin Mountain with Peaceful Homes Property Management. We're on the 400 block of North Prince Street. We've been having a lot of issues with getting utility bills from the city. We've called, specifically trash bills. We've called, emailed, gone back and forth quite a bit. They said they've been sent out. We can't get them from the post office. We've offered to come by the city hall here to pick them up. They recommended that we come here to kind of let you know what's going on, see if there's any resolution we can get. We manage a little over 500 units, so there's a lot of trash bills out there that we're trying to get. And we've been proactively reaching out since the beginning of January to try to get these bills so that we can pay. They get turned over to collections, and I don't know if the city has a certain figure worked out with collections, but from my experience with collection agencies, they collect a percentage, and so the city's missing out on a decent percentage of income that we're trying to actively pay. So we're just looking for some sort of resolution to work together where we can find ways to be able to get utility bills. I know a lot of people are having issues with they're getting a utility bill, they pay the utility bill, and then it's not being allocated, so their second utility bill is coming out, and it's got the previous bill on there that hasn't been allocated yet ever since it's gone to monthly. We've been able to avoid that by hand delivering a lot of our bills, which we're fine to do even with this. We just need to be able to get the bills so that we can pay them. So we're just looking for any sort of help or resolution to pay the city.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Austin. Tina Campbell, right back there in the blue sweater, she's going to flag that and make sure that you have a resolution. And this seems like a good time to just give council a very brief update. As I spoke about, and as we're all aware, there have been some pretty significant challenges related to the transition from our quarterly billing to our monthly billing, complicated with an update to our enterprise system and a phone system all at once. Created quite a bit of consternation on the part of the public and also staff. Tina and Julie have really been doing an incredible job working through all of the challenges. We are in a test environment for auto payments, and we are working to get the staff trained and be able to roll that out. And I will be able to give you a firm timeline for when that will be, and we will be doing a lot more promotion to make sure that the public is aware of this opportunity. We have heard loudly what would make this process easier, and our team is working really hard to bring that about. So thank you, Mr. Mountain, for coming tonight, and we will follow up.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sirachi. Any additional public comment this evening?
Yes, I'm going to talk about consultants. I think I heard at the budget, I thought they said the city has 6, but now I'm trying to understand it's probably more like 60, and I misunderstood that, consultants. I'm really concerned about the southeast area of the city. We have 3 new projects that are going on. We had I guess, an open house at King's School with the projects. And I guess my concern is, and I'll say to the mayor, when he was elected, we know we had a meeting with people from the southeast area, and we said, what is the plan for the southeast? And you said, we don't have one, we're scratching, we're going to start new. And we will include and come up with a plan for the southeast area. So recently we have the Chesapeake Broad Street, we have Duke Street, and we also have Ann and Dolphin Street. And I'm wondering about council, if you approve consultants. I'm trying to understand where the consistency is. If we watch in other neighborhoods, there's kind of a consistency about how we build out that neighborhood. Yet in the southeast area, we have 3 different consultants with 3 different ideals with that don't, like, they don't go together. You know, the Duke Street plan doesn't fit with the Chesapeake Broad Street plan, does not fit with the Ann and Dolphin Street plan. And I'm wondering what council can do as we start, if you have the responsibility of approving of consultants, where does that come together in the southeast area? Because it looks like we have 3 different groups of people wanting to do different things. I know that we have spoken with the Ann and Judiana consultants very on, and I know Emma and Public Works did an excellent job with meeting with South End on many occasions. We showed up at the meeting and they took our concerns and our solutions into the consideration when they developed the project. As far as for Broad Street and Chesapeake Street, the first meeting was at Thaddeus Stevens College, and we had people from Broad Street and Orange Broad, North Broad, I should say. And we had a lot of people there. We had one guy there from Orange Street that rides his bike, but the consensus about what should happen there was expressed. We had another meeting at Washington Elementary School where there were a lot of people there. And again, we asked, well, where are our comments? To the consultants, we're asking, where are the comments showing that people are making? And they were not there. So when I went to the King Street School to see the plan and didn't see any of the suggestions that neighbors met, and the people that were there had a lot of concerns about the plan. So I know it's not finalized yet, but I think too many times we wait to speak up till it's ready to go for a vote or an approval. And we need to know that there's some dissatisfaction. How do we come together and get the consultants with the people in the neighborhood? We're meeting with them, we're telling them, we're doing what you say to do. We have lots of people all over the city, is why I question about the tourist consultant that is taking surveys. But you know, they're not the ones that live in the neighborhood and have to be there. So we're getting a lot of input from people outside of the city.
I just wanted to.
Oh, okay, from outside the city. So my question is to council, what can you do? And if you have no power to do anything, what would help give you power as a home rule commission to help on these issues that the residents bring to your attention?
Thank you very much. Well, I don't have a direct answer or response to you. I would love to follow up with you on that, so I'll be reaching out.
Thank you.
Additional comments this evening? Mr. Dastra.
Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. I didn't plan on making a second comment tonight, but something happened in our whole thing that has me frustrated to the core of my being, and I'm really trying to withhold on my anger. Because I felt there was a moment where a resident's, whatever you want to call it, was dismissed. I understand these are frustrating things, and frankly, I understand I'm a frustrating person at times. But like I said the last time I was here relevant to the library tax, these are the avenues in which we improve ourselves as people to govern ourselves. And also, for personal context, why I'm so upset. We've all laughed here. I shouldn't say we. I have sobbed in front of this body before. I'm only okay because I have had this avenue to speak. That is why I was frustrated earlier. We've really got to do what we can do as people to not make a resident feel diminished, because it only creates more animosity. So on that note, though, I am frustrated enough to make a comment, even though I agree with a lot of work that the city has done in the since 2017. I want to say what I feel one of the biggest mistakes we've made thus far is, because there was a moment where I truly was so upset about an issue, I thought my heart was going to explode. I thought I was going to have to take myself to the hospitals during the pandemic times. I feel we made a mistake with our ARPA dollars by not utilizing them to exercise eminent domain on the old printing facility, because under Chapter 128 of the Third Class City Code, it grants us the ability to create homeless shelters. of all the ways we spent the ARPA dollars, I wish we would have done more for that issue. Because there was a matter before, months ago, during the pandemic times, where I had been questions about my knowledge on an issue, and I responded, I'm just doing the best I can, essentially. And it seemed like that thing came full circle when some individuals were removed from a public space later on. I am being discreet. I'm very upset, and I just want you to know that right now. I really do value the work you guys do. I do. And I hope that we can have some conversations at another time, not in this forum. Thank you.
Mr. Dastrow, thank you. Are there any additional public comments for tonight's meeting? Hearing none, and thank you everyone who participated this evening. We will now move to the next item in our agenda, which is the report of the mayor. Mayor Sriracha.
Given the hour, I am going to yield my time to council, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next item is the report of President of Council, of which I do not have one this evening. And we will now move to council comments. Are there any council comments this evening? Hearing none, having reached the end of our agenda, I will now hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.